Okay, call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Okay, I'll need the council people to go ahead and unmute. Chuck, are you kind of watching that for me? Yep. All right, we're ready for roll. Chisel.
Here.
Neal.
Here.
Carlson.
Kirk's coming in now.
Can't hear Carlson. Indy, I see your box, but I don't hear you. Bergen.
Here.
Hadley.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Luce. I'm gonna go back to Andy. Andy, I can't hear you.
Chad, I think that Andy texted he was having trouble logging in and his audio is not connected here.
Okay. And we're missing Steve. Anybody heard from Steve?
I heard from him today. Hold on.
Hey, just be patient. We'll get started here in a few minutes once everybody's in.
Hey, Steve, are you having trouble with your audio logging in?
I could say the Pledge of Allegiance for you.
I did an upgrade on my computer today, and I just about didn't have the camera working. It took like 15 minutes of button pushing to get everything set back up after all the updates. So I'm with everybody.
Yeah, you're coming across. You are coming across nice and clear, Ross. We can't find Steve, and we're having a hard time hearing Andy.
Andy can't see or hear anything. He's accessed the link and like we can see his name here.
Yes.
He's not getting anything.
Maybe tell him to drop off and come back on.
Steve had to do an update, so he's in the process of trying to log on right now.
Okay.
I should add too, I've had some a lot of internet drop-offs this afternoon. I've been working from home and I keep getting unstable and getting kicked out. In fact, I got kicked out of this meeting just a minute ago.
Okay.
Sorry for the delay, but we'll get going as soon as we can.
I can ask my question. Can I ask you a question, Chad?
Yes.
How does the process go so we're gonna do roll call, public engagement, then we're gonna approve the agenda. Are we just approving the entire agenda or consent agenda? Like if we want to change something not in the consent, but in the whole agenda, when does that happen?
That would happen right after roll call.
Okay. And I'm going to recommend the order of things, not taking something off.
Okay.
Is Andy on now?
No, I don't think so.
Drive down to City Hall.
I've made use of the public library parking lot internet to join a meeting because of this. So it's not a bad recommendation.
Yeah, Andy could drive down and just sit in the parking lot. We have free Wi-Fi down here, right?
Yeah.
This picture just came up.
Oh, good.
But he has media cam.
Yeah, I don't want to jinx this, but I should write a note to CenturyLink about their awesomeness. You guys want some council member show and tell? My puppy.
Andy, you were there. Now you're gone. You're on twice. I'm gonna unmute him. Andy, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yay!
Yes. Hey, there we go.
My apologies. I had to start a new Zoom account. I don't know what's going on.
That's weird. So it sounds like that's what Steve's doing too, right? Is anybody still in communication with Steve?
I just texted him again. He was trying to reboot and get on.
I had to do the same thing after the update. You had to create a new account to get in.
I had the update. I'd already been in some other Zoom, so I had the update. So I don't know what the deal was, and it had let me into other meetings since the update. So I'm not quite sure why it wouldn't work. Anyway, sorry about that.
Well, you're here now.
I'm calling Steve again.
Tell Steve he might just have to sit in the house. I know he's accustomed to sitting out in the backyard.
He says he's on. Oh, he's on the phone, but not visual.
What's his number?
What's that number?
What's your number, Steve? 379-2327. So you're going to follow on audio? Okay. Thank
There
you.
he is. I see him. Do you see him?
Okay. Bye.
Okay, are we ready?
You want to unmute him? Okay, let's have the council unmute. Can you unmute, Steve? Okay, so we were in the midst of roll and we lost Carlson and Luce, so I will ask for Carlson and Luce to acknowledge. Carlson?
Hello.
Steve,
There's Steve.
Yes.
you're here.
Yeah, I answered Emily, and that kicked me off the other, and so I had to call again.
Okay, we can hear you.
Chad,
Carlson,
I'm
you're here.
Present.
All right, we have a quorum, Mayor.
Okay. I think if I'm correct, that I would move on with public comment?
Oh, wait, is this where I'm supposed to make my motion, Chad?
There's a question as to the order, Mayor.
The order of the agenda?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to move item number 8 ahead of number 6 and 7.
My choice, I prefer that the agenda stays as written.
Does the council vote
I
on
would
this?
move that we change the agenda by placing number 8 before number 4. I think I need a second.
So there was a motion made by Luce.
Oh,
By Luke.
I second that.
Emily seconded. Discussion? Can you
I
state
think
your
it'd be
reason?
pertinent. I think it would be pertinent to talk about our complaint and our addition into the docket on the last rate case before we talk about franchise agreements.
Just a reminder, I think at the last city council meeting was in this order, and I think those concerns were brought up again, and that at that point, the council voted to continue. Those are my only comments on it. Are there any other comments?
Yeah, we've never had this on the agenda as it is.
No, we talked about, when we talked at the city council meeting about that potential, I think it was talked through in the discussion.
I mean, I guess it just doesn't make sense to have a conversation about signing a franchise fee if we don't first talk about the comments and complaint to the utility board.
Well,
That just seems, why would we talk about signing a franchise agreement ahead of the complaints that we might have?
yeah, that comment was brought up also. But what other comments from other city council, please?
I would like to hear from our attorney. Is this without an action item? Can we take an action like this?
Excuse me, you mean to move an item on the agenda?
Right, when it's not an agenda item to take an action like this?
Well, it's on the agenda. I don't see an issue with taking action on any item that's on the agenda. And if there's a motion to move an agenda item, I think it's fine to do that if the motion is approved by the council. So I think you have a motion on the table and a second.
Okay.
And as soon as the discussion's closed, you can vote on whether to move that item.
Any further discussion?
This is Johanna. It's a procedural change that makes sense to me.
Hearing no other discussion. Roll call?
Luce,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Carlson,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Bergen,
Aye.
Chisel.
No.
Motion carried. This is to move number 8. Give me some direction.
Yeah, item 8 is now moved up ahead of number 4. And so then you'll just continue with the agenda. The next item on the agenda is number 2, public comment.
Okay. Is there any public comment that you wish to talk about that are not on the agenda?
Having trouble hearing the mayor making comments.
Okay. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, I gotcha. Hearing none, consent agenda, please.
Okay, the mayor, you want to mute your microphone? Okay, the consent agenda consists of minutes of the May 6, May 11, and May 18, 2020 meetings, claims, new Class B beer permit for Snap Marketing, Resolution 3089, setting a date for a public hearing on an easement agreement with Woolen Mill for parking, Resolution 3090, a resolution setting a public hearing on proposed plans and specifications, estimate of cost, and proposed form of contract for the construction of the Commerce Drive Decorah 2020 Street Improvement Project and directing the engineer to post notice for taking of bids, July 6, 2020 at 5:45 p.m. And Resolution 3091, accepting the 2019 Ridge Road Improvement Project lower section as complete and releasing final retainage in the amount of $8,522.91.
I have a motion.
I'll make a motion for the approval of this consent agenda.
Second,
Bruce,
Mrs.
second.
Bergen. Oh, Steve can have it.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Carlson,
Aye.
Bergen,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Luce.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Excuse me, Mayor. I have a correction to make on my own. I'm going to have to correct myself. I looked at the council rules, and it does say action items may be reordered at the discretion of the mayor with the consent of the council. I apologize, but I looked that up, and my answer before was incorrect.
We did follow it according to what you just said.
For the consent agenda, but I'm talking about reordering number 8 to prior to number 6.
So we would have to, essentially, the mayor would have to say she wanted to do it or not do it, and we would either have to approve or not approve what she said.
Correct. According to the rules, it says action items may be reordered at the discretion of the mayor with the consent of the council.
What if the council wants to, but the mayor does not?
That's not what our rules provide for. I apologize. That's the way I would have interpreted it, but that's in the rules that the action items may be reordered at the discretion of the mayor.
Okay, I'm confused because I thought that's what we just did prior to the consent agenda.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mayor. Did you want to reorder the agenda, though? Number 8 to be before number 6?
Actually, I thought the vote was number 8 to go before number 4.
Or number 4? I apologize. Maybe I'm confusing it, but that was a motion made by a council member to do that.
Yes,
Is that what you wish to do?
I had stated that I wish it to stay the same.
Okay.
And then,
However, the council did not give their acceptance to that as made by the motion, the second, and the vote 6-1. So where are we, John?
So I apologize. I think I interpreted it wrong before because I did not see this in the rules, but it says action items may be reordered at the discretion of the mayor with the consent of the council. So I go back to it's the mayor's prerogative as to the order of the agenda.
okay, how about if I just make
So
this,
my
No
comment
voting
is,
on that.
my
What?
comment, John, is that it says with the consent of the council. So the council moved and seconded a motion to move it and got a 6-1 vote to do it. So it seems like our procedures are not in keeping with how to do if the council does not agree with the mayor's decision.
No, as I'm listening to all of this, and basically the mayor can change the order of the agenda items with council approval. And she's the only one who can make a change like that. So if she doesn't want to change it, then we don't have a say in it.
That's correct. That's my reading of it based upon that part of the rules.
In that case, I need your advice as to how to proceed.
Then I would proceed with the agenda as it was published.
Okay. In that case, then I'm correct.
I would like to state a comment of a protest about a council action being denied simply because our procedures don't address the question if the mayor does not want to change and the council doesn't give approval to keeping it the same, there's no remedy. So it's an inadequate procedure, and I want that in the minutes.
I appreciate that. Perhaps, Jen, you and Chad should work at making sure we have that clear.
Well, John, it appears that the council rules are silent on this scenario. And in that case, is it wrong what the council has done if the rules are silent on it?
If the rules are silent on it, I would say you could do it, but I guess I want to make it clear that the council is suspending its rules. Well, maybe it's not even suspending its rules. It's filling in the gap here, contrary to what's in the rules as published.
I mean, it seems
Well, I
like
don't believe
silent on it.
I don't believe the mayor asked when she said she wants it the same if the council agreed. So if we weren't following protocol, the council decided to make a motion and second and have a vote to say we don't agree with, even though the mayor didn't ask for our acceptance.
You know, what I'm hearing is that it's silent on whether or not the council can do anything. There isn't any framework for this. So I say we suspend. We now create a framework. We did it. It was 6-1, and we go ahead with what the council said. It doesn't seem like we're violating anything. It's just there was nothing written to say we could or couldn't.
I disagree. I think the only way that you can change the order of an agenda item is if the mayor brings it to you, and then you have a choice as council people to agree or not agree.
Well, the reason I didn't bring this up on Friday, quite honestly, is because the mayor sets the agenda. So I assumed it was going to take council action to change an agenda. The mayor set the agenda. Why would she ever want to change it? It seems a little disingenuous to suggest that the mayor who created the agenda would then want to change it on Monday, whereas I just assumed that the council could take an action to move agenda items around because this is how we have to do it in public.
I need advice as to how to proceed versus the discussion.
Just a moment, I'm reviewing this to see if there's anything else.
Did anybody want it to be before number 4? Or could we move on to number 4 and let other people talk while John and Chad research?
That was where we put it. The vote put it before 4 because Steve made a motion to move it before 4. I was just asking a question. So it is right now currently 8, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Okay.
No, it's not. We do not have the authority to move items on the agenda as a council. Only the mayor does.
I think that's what John is looking into.
The way I read it, the way I read it, it gives the mayor the authority to move things on the agenda with council approval. And since she's basically the head of the meeting, that's her discretion. With the approval of the council.
I had stated that I wished the agenda to be as listed.
Okay, then can I ask another procedural question because it's gonna come up? So when it comes to voting on a franchise, how do we vote on a franchise if we haven't had a discussion about a complaint before signing it? I mean, to me, I just don't even know how to vote on an issue that we haven't even figured out what we're doing with the final piece.
So Emily,
Can we-
let me address that a little bit because we
Sure.
contemplated this when John and Sheila and I talked today in terms of the council's standing if you consider a complaint letter. First of all, the action on the agenda tonight is considering a first reading of an ordinance for a franchise agreement. So the complete action to approve a franchise agreement or an ordinance is not completed tonight, okay? The council understands that it takes at least 3 readings, or at the most 3 readings. It takes publication of that ordinance, and it takes acceptance in writing from Alliant to cause the franchise agreement to be approved and adopted. So as we contemplated the council's standing in sending a complaint letter tonight or tomorrow morning, if that would be your direction, you've not completed action to adopt a franchise agreement. You've started the process, certainly, but you've not completed it in any stretch of the measure.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. That helps. So even if we approve a first reading, we may not approve second or third.
That's correct.
Okay, so moving forward with the agenda as it has been, puts us to number 4, public hearing on proposed utility franchise.
Having trouble hearing the mayor again.
We can't hear.
Okay. Public, now can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going back and forth for feedback over on my side here. So now we're on number 4, public hearing on proposed utility franchise fee revenue purpose statement. Chad, you give the background on that?
Chopper, can you unmute all as I kind of review the background on this for the council? So a revenue purpose statement is required if the council is going to consider A, a franchise agreement, and B, a franchise fee. And while the council has a ways to go, as we just discussed, in approving a franchise agreement, a revenue purpose statement is a required action to consider how the city may use franchise fees if implemented and if collected. This resolution proposes adoption of the broadest use of a revenue purpose statement as allowed under Iowa law, chapter 1364. The draft is attached and in the council background. The council doesn't need to include a fee at this time, nor at any time in the franchise agreement discussions. A franchise fee can be implemented at any time by the city council. This is an administrative move and one that I've put forth to the council. It's a one and done resolution. It does require this public hearing and it does require a resolution. If the council would so choose to adopt it and you don't proceed with a franchise agreement or a franchise fee at any time in the future, this action is still considered complete and would just be filed away. But if the council does propose a franchise agreement and a franchise fee at a later date, this action would be required to receive those funds and provide for their expenditure. So this would be the time for the public hearing on this. So anybody that wishes to speak on this matter, now would be the time to do so. And Kent, if you would, Kent Clokey, do you see him over there? Kent, you might have to unmute yourself. There you go. And then just state your name and address, please.
Kent Clokey, 702 Decorah Avenue. With the franchise agreement and franchise fee, in a fee situation, that's collected, I'm just looking for clarification. The fee gets collected with your utility bill, and it's a percentage. Who ends up paying that fee? Is it the user or is it the utility that pays that fee?
It's a pass-through. It is collected by the utility, but it is a fee that is paid by the ratepayer, by the user.
Okay, so it's a revenue stream for the city to use at their discretion.
Within the confines of that revenue purpose statement, though, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further public comment?
There's 2 chat boxes there. You see those?
It looks like, is that Steve? Is there any, Copper, can you see anybody else? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. We'll move on to consider resolution 3085, approving proposed utility franchise.
Unintelligible.
Okay. Okay, let's try it now.
Yeah.
Is that better? Okay. Consider resolution 3085, approving the proposed utility franchise fee revenue purpose statement.
I'd move to approve resolution 3085.
Second.
So this,
Awesome.
we don't have to set the percent, correct? So what we're saying is we want to have a fee. And when it comes to then creating the franchise agreement, we would set the fee, or do we need to set the fee tonight, the actual percentage?
Okay, so this is Chad. You do not need to set the fee tonight, nor do you even need to acknowledge that you want a fee. But if you do at a later point in time, this statement needs to be approved to notify the public of how you would intend to spend those revenues. And again, the resolution provides for the broadest use of that as by state code. As was the case with the gas utilities several years ago, the council also came in behind this statement and further restricted it locally. So for example, we restrict the gas utility for sidewalk improvements, and that's contemplated here as well. You could restrict it for anything later that you would so choose to be further restricted. But to Emily's point, you're not setting, nor is it required to set a percentage tonight, nor do you even contemplate that you would ever set a fee, right? Does that answer your question, Emily?
I think so. I just want to be clear that this is, we can set the fee. So if we choose in the next month to sign the agreement, 3 readings, we can set the fee at that point. This is not, we would just do it later.
Actually, the franchise agreement that is the next item on the agenda is a franchise agreement draft that proposes 0 fee. So even later tonight, under discussion, if you would approve first reading of the ordinance for the franchise agreement, it does not contemplate a franchise fee either. I had thought and taken my direction from council that we'll just take the franchise fee off the table for right now. And if we get through this process, you'll discuss that later. Okay.
Okay, so if we're gonna, is it better to discuss that now or when we discuss the franchise agreement? Because I guess I didn't understand in our discussions that that was the case. So I guess I wouldn't, I guess I'm saying that I don't think 0 is necessarily at least where I would want to see it at this point.
So
That's
yeah, yep. To clarify, and so that does not need to be discussed here now, right? So
Okay.
you would discuss that under 6 and 7 if that's where you want to go.
That's what I want to know. Thanks.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. Roll call? Yes.
Okay, Hadley,
Aye.
Carlson,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Bergen,
No.
Johnson,
Aye.
Luce.
Chopper, was he muted again when we ended the public comment?
Steve Luce,
He's showing muted.
He's the 2327, right?
Steve
I
Luce,
guess I'm unmuted. Aye.
How do you vote, Steve?
Aye.
I heard aye. Motion carries 6-1.
Motion. Ordinance 2449 passed. Correct. Public hearing on proposed utility franchise agreement for Alliant Energy.
So Chopper is going to unmute the public. This would be the time for those that wish to speak regarding a franchise agreement between Alliant Energy and the city of Decorah. This would be your time to speak. We would ask you to state your name and address before speaking, please. We'll try to pay attention to who's waving us down here.
We have anybody who wishes to speak? Yes.
Going once, going twice, no sale.
This
It
is
works?
Jim Burton Schramm. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I'll just go on record and say that I don't understand why Alliant Energy is willing to make a off-ramp at 5 years and 7 years and 12 years, but not at 3 years or 2 years. It seems relatively arbitrary. Their argument is that they want enough time to recover the cost of their investments in Decorah. And the reality is those investments would be recouped in any transaction that is authorized by the Iowa Utilities Board. The board is charged with determining the fair price for the acquisition of those resources, those assets in Decorah, if in fact we got to the point where the city was requesting the board to approve a municipal utility. And so the fact that Alliant refuses to provide an off-ramp earlier than 5 years is just not reasonable from my perspective. They have every opportunity to recover every dollar they invest in the community. So that's my comment.
Any
Mayor, you're, oh, yeah.
Danny, Chad? Yeah.
6043, do you have a comment?
No.
Okay,
Okay, thank you, Mayor. If you'd mute yourself, I do have a couple of emails that came in that asked they be read into the record. and I will do so, and then also note others that came in as well as being in the council Dropbox. Yes. Okay, the first one came in from Jody Neese, 303 West Water as her place of business. She asked me to read this. She says, I would encourage the city council to take a good look at the offer from Alliant. The 3 council members that are opposed to this public hearing have close ties with Winneshiek Energy District and/or nonprofits. I have urged all in the past to look past their own personal agendas and do what is fiscally sound for the city of Decorah right now. Number one is not a given that the Iowa Utilities Board will even allow another vote for a municipality, and that can't be for another 2 years, if at all. Number two, we are down in sales tax revenue, which means there needs to be budget cuts. Hopefully the downtown businesses can recover from the pandemic, but that is not a given either. When people work for nonprofits, they don't understand that they are funded by for-profit businesses who have employees that they pay, as well as taxes, insurance, etc. I don't like having to pay any higher utility bills than I have to do, but I do understand the cost of doing business and depending on reliable utilities. A 5-year agreement is nothing when you look at what has been offered in the past. At this point in time, it's not something you can pass up. Water and sewer rates have gone up considerably. It's hard to imagine a municipality with the idea that you can keep your rates low when your costs are high. Given the times that we're living in, financially, the agreement is the best bet. Thank you for the opportunity to express my opinion, Jody Neese. A letter was also received from Haywood Stowe, Operations Director at Collins Aerospace. That's in the council's Dropbox. That was not asked to be read. Letters were also received from, or an email at least, from Kent Clokey and Marla Clokey. And Steve Knipe sent an email later this afternoon that's also in the council packet, and he asked me to read that as well. Mr. Byrd, after reviewing the work Alliant Energy has done in the area since last fall and what they currently have planned, I feel signing the franchise agreement is a good deal for Decorah. Downtown business owners are really fighting a battle to survive right now. And with the huge loss of sales tax dollars, the city budget will feel this hit very soon. City projections for future budgets and spending will hold plenty of unknowns. Water Street was built by strong for-profit business leaders and not a few nonprofits that survive only on grants and donations and city funding that claim to be municipality experts. Several new business leaders are looking at Decorah for new construction. Much of this will rely on this franchise agreement being signed. These will continue to be tough times for months and maybe years to come, and Decorah will have a full plate of issues. Please do not pass this up and sign it. Thank you, Steve Knipe, West Decorah. Those were the only comments received at City Hall.
Chad, did you indicate on the other letters from Mr. Haywood and the Clokeys what their position was?
I did not, thank you. Marla Clokey urged the council to sign the agreement. Kent Clokey urged the council to sign the agreement. And the letter from Haywood Stowe at Collins urges the council to sign the agreement.
Thank you. There's no further comments. I'll close the public hearing. Consider ordinance 1249 approving the proposed utility franchise agreement with Alliant Energy. First reading.
I would move to approve ordinance 1249 as presented, with no franchise fee at the present time, and approve the first reading.
Second from Johnson.
Any further discussion or any discussion?
I'll be voting no because I believe the order of the discussion would have been had merit as well.
Ross?
Well, I mean, I feel like I've been really clear, but I think it's important, you know, each time there are new people on the phone and in front of our audience to sort of explain, I think, my feelings about the franchise agreement. I think that when we look at the way in which Alliant has treated Decorah throughout the past several years, including the misrepresentation of their rates continuing forward into the future, I think it's very hard to sign an agreement with a company that has been less than forthcoming with our community. So it gives me pause to enter into any long-term agreement because of that. I do understand the nature of our economy. And quite honestly, one of the things that concerns me the most is that as with Alliant, as our utility provider, we are at a disadvantage for economic development. We pay the highest utility rates of any investor-owned utility in the state of Iowa. And so if a company is looking to come and relocate to Decorah, they could look at other communities. They could look at Waverly. They could look at Iowa City. And they could pay roughly 10% less in their utility costs currently, right now. We know that Alliant has plans to go back to the utility board and raise rates even higher. I don't have any special interest of my own other than I don't like paying high utility rates. But other than that, I'm not being represented by a special interest group. I'm representing the people of Decorah. And when I think about what's best for the people of Decorah, I don't think paying exorbitantly high utility rates is what is in their best interest. So it's very hard for me to enter into this agreement because of those reasons. That said, I do think that, again, the situation we're in, a franchise fee can be helpful to many people on many different levels. So I think, and this is why it's really hard, this order makes this very difficult to discuss in any number of ways, because both the franchise fee as it reads with no fee limits our ability and our capacity to do anything about our high utility rates in the future. So if we don't have a utility fee, you know, there's been a call for no MEU. No MEU to me means we will continue to essentially be pillaged by Alliant's high rates, and that is unacceptable to me as a council member. The second is that there is a question about how this franchise agreement is even being entered into, and some other council members, including myself, feeling a little forced with our hands tied or swung over a barrel, as the case may be. So I guess I'm very frustrated by the order. I'm very frustrated that we're choosing to do this without even consideration of a franchise fee. And so, I mean, so for me, I'll be voting no as well.
Are you prepared to pay $1.5 million for work on Locust Road that would otherwise be covered by the franchise fee in the agreement?
I am not convinced that that $1.5 million is a real number. So to me, when I look at that number, it costs $1.5 million to bury the lines, 1.4 to just move 4 poles. Like, none of this makes sense to me, Kirk, and I get it. I get the fear, but none of it, I can't get over the fact that I feel like we're being lied to over and over again. And that, as a council member, it feels wrong. It feels wrong that I would enter into an agreement where I think we're being screwed. And I don't know any other way to say it.
Are you prepared to pay $1.5 million more on a Locust Road project that may get scuttled because of that extra expense?
As I said, I don't believe those numbers are real, which is why I want to go to the utility. It's why I wanted to discuss 8 before anything else, right? I think we have relief at the utility board. I think a complaint will get us what we need, because I don't see how the numbers add up. So Kirk, it is not that I'm prepared to pay $1.5 million for Locust Road. I don't want to pay that. Of course I don't. What I'm saying is that I think we have a grievance that needs to be filed before we can make any kind of intelligible decision, because I think as I mentioned, I just don't think we're being treated fairly. So no, I don't want to pay $1.5 million unnecessarily. I want to go to the utility board and ask them to help us resolve our issues with Alliant, with a company who has been less than transparent, when the utility board has already slapped their hand and said, you have to be transparent with your communities. So yeah, I want the utility board to look at this $1.5 million and say, actually, that's not realistic. Or to tell us it is completely realistic, Alliant is well within their bounds, you should sign this franchise agreement. But I guess without the approval of the infrastructure that is in place to protect us from our investor-owned utilities, I guess I feel like I would be doing my community a disservice at this point to sign an agreement.
And in my case, the 0% is a loss. Right now, currently, we're getting 1% from local option sales tax. So to discuss anything at 0% is actually a loss to the city, which is why a procedural thing to have the discussion would have been better.
I'll be begrudgingly voting yes, due to the fact that I feel like our infrastructure projects are being, will probably be set back if we do not sign a franchise agreement, unfortunately. While I agree with Emily and Ross, I can't operate on what not or what might be. What we're looking at is fact. Maybe not the numbers necessarily, but the fact that they do have the power to charge us accordingly. What that number is, I don't know if anyone necessarily knows for sure.
Well, they have pretty much told us what that number is that they will bill us. And I believe that bill will come due rather soon, sooner rather than later.
My understanding is they still have to give us an estimate, don't they, Chad? I mean, they have to provide like, this is what we spent on this. Or they can just tell us whatever they want and we have to pay it. I mean, I think they still have to provide what the actual bill was.
And Kirk, if you're concerned about infrastructure, you can't vote for 0 because we would lose money from the street budget.
It's my understanding that we can discuss that amount later at a later date, that it doesn't have to be tied to this particular agreement. That's the only reason I think we should just move forward with it and talk about 1 or 2% at some other time.
If we don't put it in this agreement, it's at Alliance disclosure or discretion whether or not we open up the agreement to do it again. So it would have to be in the agreement we signed.
No, we can do it anytime.
Chad said it's up to Alliant to open up the agreement. If we sign an agreement that has 0%, it's up to Alliant. We have to ask Alliant if we can reopen it to change the percentage on the franchise fee.
Yeah, but Mayor, can you turn that down? Regarding implementation of a franchise fee, Alliant does have to agree to open the agreement to implement a franchise fee at council discretion, but they will not resist because it's neutral for them. They serve as a pass-through, but it's council's decision whether to implement a franchise fee or not. So it is opening the agreement. They do have to agree to do that, but they won't resist that effort.
Even if they had even if they didn't want us to use a franchise fee for what we might want to use it for?
I don't think they get to decide that. That's in the context of the revenue purpose statement that you just approved.
So we don't, okay.
Excuse me, if it helps, the franchise agreement that's in the Dropbox says in section 10, the company and city agree that the city council may, in its discretion, increase the franchise fee by amending this section 10 of this ordinance, provided no increase shall exceed the maximum franchise fee allowed by Iowa law. Upon notice, the company shall promptly seek a tax rider tariff, and it goes on. So that seems to indicate that it's at the discretion of the city. We've got to follow some procedural steps to get it, to raise it, but Alliant in the franchise agreement is agreeing to the city having that discretion.
And we haven't been rushed into this. We've been in negotiations with Alliant since 2016 and put them off in 2018, and then we started getting billed for projects, and now we're to the point we are today. And I don't know where that 10% or higher rates come from, because I've got a Des Moines Register printout here. It is slightly higher than Waverly Municipal, but not by much, $1.
I'm
14
talking
cents
about
of-
Mid-America rates. I'm talking about the other investor-owned utility. They pay about 10 cents a kilowatt
No,
hour.
you said Waverly Utilities.
No, I was talking about, actually, just to correct what I said, I did not say Waverly Utility. I said our other investor-owned utility. Waverly, what I said was that you can still go to Waverly and pay less money as a business for your utility. So please don't put words in my mouth. I know what I said.
Okay. Yeah, we are.
Chad,
Wanda, do you have a comment?
well, I just wonder if you or John would like to go over what happens if the first reading of this ordinance fails.
Yeah, if the first reading of the ordinance fails, the ordinance fails. It could only be brought back by those on the prevailing side of the council, or a different version of the ordinance would have to come back to council. John?
That's correct. And we have a notice and public hearing requirement if it is changed.
Right. Ross, could I ask you to clarify something that I wrote down, but I'm not sure I understood your position on it in terms of losing revenue with an agreement that's at 0%?
Right. It's my understanding that right now we're collecting roughly 1% through local option sales tax, as we're not currently in a franchise agreement, correct?
Yes.
If we vote on a 0% franchise agreement, it would be setting the agreement at 0. We'd be voting on it. We'd have to have a second reading and a third reading. It would take another action to set the fee at a later date. And in addition to having a hard time with the costs of what is proposed for Locust Road project specifically, my concern is that there wouldn't be consent in the council or continuity in the council to have a high enough franchise fee to offset that loss, and to have additional monies to build toward other energy goals specifically. So my concern would be at 0%. It just wouldn't, it would be bad on different levels.
Okay, as a point of order then, if I were to withdraw my second to this motion, we start over and we can even talk about adding 1 or 2 or 3% or whatever you desire to get this thing through tonight. I would be happy to do that. I withdraw my second.
I have a procedural question. Can we table it till the end of the night? Can we table something and talk about it later at the end of the night? What does tabling mean?
Yeah, okay, I'll read it from the rules. So motion to table may be made to suspend council consideration of an item that appears on the council agenda. It does not require, or it does require a second, is not debatable, and requires majority vote of all council members present, and if adopted, cannot be reconsidered at that meeting. A motion to table can be made by any member of the council prior to a vote on an action item. So it can, you can make that at any time before you call roll call vote.
So you just can't table it to talk about it 9 o'clock or something like that?
And we can't talk about it again tonight. It's tabled until another meeting.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Give me the direction. Give me the direction. Give me the direction of the fact that we have a motion and a second.
We no longer have a second, Mayor. I've withdrawn my second so that we can talk about adding a fee.
So, John?
Well, so the question becomes, Mayor, can you mute? The question becomes for John, is discussion of implementation of a franchise fee now a significant enough change that it has to be republished, or is it insignificant enough that the public has been noticed and the council is modifying a minor term of the agreement?
I would say it's substantive to increase that fee. I mean, that's something that's going to impact the public. So I would consider it a substantive change.
So that means if Johnson withdraws his second, you have Chisel's motion to consider, but if it dies for lack of a second or fails, the council will need to reset the public hearing on a different ordinance.
I know it's.
So
Kirk,
we're
I
looking
think
for-
you're muted.
I meant to be.
Oh, sorry.
So we need council direction. Right now we have a motion from Chisel with no second on the ordinance as presented with a 0% franchise fee.
Just want to make very clear that I am in favor of a franchise agreement with Alliant, but I feel that without having the percentage of a fee determined ahead of time, that we might fail in passing one. And I think it's important that we pass one.
Currently, we were looking for a second of that motion since Kurt withdrew his motion, correct?
And Randy withdraw his motion and start over?
We still can't get to we still can't determine a percentage of increase though, or a franchise fee tonight, right?
No.
Because it's not on the agenda.
Is it possible?
Well, you certainly could discuss it. You just can't change that ordinance.
I will just say that I think the collection of a franchise fee that would be meaningful to the community. I know it's a pass through onto the people, but we collected in other utilities, and I think it's important to come to a decision on that in light of the costs of other things as well. So if we want to have that discussion after we move through the agenda, or now, I don't know procedurally what's correct.
You can do it now. You should do it now.
I agree with Ross. I mean, go ahead, Johanna. Give a talk.
Yeah, I also, so this is Johanna, also share Ross's concerns about franchise agreement with no franchise fee, and understand that it's a difficult time to be talking about fees of any kind. We're all feeling that. But I'm also very called to think about the vision for Decorah that I'm working towards, and that calls me to commit time and to serve on council. And that's a community that can take action on our priorities. And I believe that the franchise fee is a small part of that work, and share the concerns that Ross earlier shared about making sure we're not reducing almost by accident dollars that go to infrastructure that's needed.
I would agree with that. I think if there is a franchise, it certainly needs to be in the best interest of the community. And to me, the best interest of the community right now is having dollars to invest in our community, and that is the franchise fee. So
I do have a question. As far as when you're looking at the economy, which is huge right now, if it wasn't for that, that could be a changing point, but it's extremely challenging financially. I'm under the understanding that to put a vote before the public, again, for municipality, you could do that in 2 years. And you can do that with a franchise, that doesn't have to do with the franchise fee. So in 2 years, you put a vote before the public. If you had 5 years on the franchise fee, then you would wait until that, you can go ahead and work with that and build that up. And then day one that you come to that 5 year, you would be ready for a municipal utility if that was the case. My question is in the meantime, with a 5 year, which seems short, and I understand fully the Alliant piece, but I'm looking totally at the financial aspect and for the city and the value of having that place in this time, especially not just for Locust Road, but for any other projects that we would have. And so I'm looking at what value that piece has for that 5 year period. That's where I have an issue. And I know that actually, there's other people that have also stated that they feel a franchise fee is important, including businesses, including individuals. And if it weren't for that time period, that 5 year time period, even I think it was stated that you pass it, it still would take you, what, a year or two to get that set up. So I'm asking how you compare that or balance that with what is currently needed right now as far as our economy is concerned.
I completely agree with you, Lorraine, with the exception of not necessarily setting the franchise fee now and tying municipalization to it. We've had staff do a comp research on franchise fees. Chad, in our peer groups, what were the average franchise fees?
Ross, I don't know the number. The maximum by law is 5%. Most cities are between 3 and 5%.
Right. That was the number I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Most cities are between 3 and 5%. I think that's the discussion we need to be having, not 0.
Yeah, and if you really want to know, I could pull them up. It would take me a minute, but I do have like our Waukon, West Union, Calmer. I think I sent them out, didn't I? Like what they were, I forget. So we would be low at 2%. I don't disagree with you, Mayor. Right? I don't. What I have a hard time. This is why I wanted 8, quite honestly, before 6, because I really think it's important to be able to talk about our ability. Like right now, we're signing a franchise agreement under duress because we're worried about our road infrastructure and the costs that are going to be assumed. But we also know that that could actually be discriminatory. And so it's really hard to think about signing something when we haven't actually played out whether or not we're actually being treated fairly to begin with. Other than that, I don't disagree with you. I'm glad to hear that businesses are in support of a franchise fee, because a franchise fee is the way that we can invest in our community in the way that we all, not just council, but our community has asked for, whether that be roads or public safety, the things that we've wanted to work with the school more. We obviously need funding. So it's not that I'm trying to say no franchise fee. I just want to know from the utility board, because I'm having a really hard time feeling like we've been told the truth.
I think sometimes when I look at it, this is Lorraine, sometimes when I look at it, I have a problem. I know the angst and the energy that went into presenting your case before the IUB. I know how those feelings are. I think the issue comes almost for me is in the fact that I'm going to be punished in a sense also from having to pay more for putting roads in when I would be looking at a smaller, being able to look ahead. It's sort of like a means to an end for me. And when I look at the negotiations, I feel that we've had negotiations. Alliant has negotiated. They went from 8 to 5. They went from where previous one was 25 to 15. They've answered every question that you have asked and brought stuff forth. And that being said, I have a problem with even thinking the litigation of working with something like this for two reasons. One, the amount of money that it will take to work with lawyers to work with this. And I think the second one too is the fact that we could be putting money towards what would be worked on for the municipal utility. I just have a problem with it. And if it weren't for the fact that the economy is so tight as it is right now, the one thing too that I wonder is what kind of a long-term effect of working with this in this fashion, what the effect does that have on as far as the city going and applying to the IUB with a municipal application? And then what effect will this have on the voters as far as that ultimate vote? That first vote, you were even except for 3 votes, which means you did have equal amount that didn't want it with an additional 3.
And about 10 times greater financing by Alliant with completely misinformation to the city. I mean, that's the complaint, right? So during that election, there wasn't even a fairness in the information that voters had. They had misinformation from Alliant, complete falsehoods, yet we only lost by 3 votes. So I think there's something there. The other thing I would point out, Mayor, I just want to address your concerns about like city road costs and utility costs, because like for me, the city budget's obviously not my own personal budget, but I look at my own personal budget and think about what are my constituents feeling. So I can tell you that, first of all, if I look at my property tax raises in the last couple years, if some of which are going down at the moment, right? If I look at what the cost of Locust Road would do to my property taxes, none of that hits me as hard as a 15% cost in my utility bill this year. And if I think about another 2 years, them going back to the utility board and asking for another 15, maybe they're going to ask for 25% increase, that hurts my pocketbook a whole lot more than paying for Locust Road. So I guess that's why I'm a little like, what is the long-term goal here? Is it to just lower our Decorah residents' budgets? Is it to invest in our infrastructure? For me, I kind of want to do both. And so I want to be able to have some relief from continuing these increases in our utility rates.
That part I understand too. But when it comes down to when you're looking at paying, as Kurt said, for Locust Road, I probably wouldn't be looking at the future down the road for what my utility costs would be. I'm going to be looking at saying, how much am I going to have to pay for that road when I could have not paid as much with a window that allows for an opt-out in 5 years to vote. You can vote in 2. You're going to know ahead of time. And at the end of that 5 years, you would be ready to go on and be able to work and be able to have the type of revenue with your own municipality. I'm one of your constituents, so I get
it. I totally do. I guess I'm also, I guess there's that part of me that's concerned about why is this 5 years, this magic number? Because I don't trust Alliant, because I don't want to enter into agreement with them. I look at this 5 years and I think their inflexibility in moving it at all, even from what Steve recommended was just flip the 2-year and the 5-year out, or start the 5 years from back in 2018, all of these things, where they're completely inflexible. The only reason they give us is that because they can't recoup their rates. But I am suspicious that there's another reason. I don't know what it is, but this 5 years is a magic number. And I'm concerned that that magic number has to do with municipalization. I'm concerned that they've set this 5 year because they know that somehow if they can hold us off till then, We can't municipalize.
But that's not the
Point
case.
of order.
That's an assumption. And the assumption, I understand your assumption, but the fact of the matter is what we're looking at currently financially.
Question? Question?
Yeah, please state who you are and.
Steve.
This is Steve. I have a question. If we approve a 0%, does that mean that the local option sales tax isn't collected anymore?
No, it's still,
collected. A 0% franchise agreement is status quo as far as local option sales tax.
The 1% is still coming in as local options. So in a sense, what Ross said wasn't quite right. We'd still be getting the 1% local option tax, right?
Yes, the only way it negatively impacts the local option sales tax collections is if the franchise agreement has a 1%, because then it shifts the 1%
Correct.
from those ratepayers to the franchise fee fund from local option sales tax. There is a little bit of a net gain because nonprofits and governmental entities will also pay the franchise fee where they don't
Correct.
pay the sales tax today. A total or
Thank you.
true net gain is if you're at 2% or above.
I know some of you have concerns that Alliant has not treated us fairly in the negotiations, but what we found is that there are no cities out there that have any longer windows or shorter, I should say shorter windows than 5 years. That's just the way they do these agreements. 5 years is what they do for just about everybody. Sometimes much, much longer periods of time, 20 years, 25 years, and so on. And I'm really concerned that we need to pass this now. If we want to add a 2 or 3 or 4% increase later, I trust that we can do that. So therefore, I am going to put everyone's toes to the fire here. I'm going to redo my second on Randy's motion. And if we want to talk about a fee increase later, we certainly can do that. We can do that at our next regular meeting. We can do it at a special meeting later this week if you want to. But I think we need to get this franchise fee determined tonight. And
Agreement.
So in the motion.
Okay, now, from what I understand, we have a motion and a second, a solid second first. Let's come back.
This is Johanna, and I would just add one additional component to the discussion, maybe two. I think that there are two primary concerns that I have in terms of the franchise agreement that's in front of us today. One is that I have seen movement at the negotiation table with Alliant, for which I am grateful. But for me, it's not enough. And the reason that I am pushing for one more move, preferably in the first window, is because of the breach of trust that occurred between Alliant and our citizens. And I do believe that breach of trust and public display and commitment to almost no or very low rate increases just turned out to be so blatantly incorrect within 18 months. And for that reason, I, at a negotiation table, in order to establish trust and to move forward in a new form of partnership, need to ask for something greater than the norm. And it's for that reason that I'm not comfortable with this agreement. And then the second thing I would share is just we learn a lot of things while we're sitting at council. We have decisions in front of us that we have to research and find out about new fields and businesses that we didn't know about prior to being at the table. And mostly I enjoy that learning process. The process here connected to the discussions with Alliant has never felt comfortable and has felt actually mostly uncomfortable. And I leave meetings where we've been in discussion with Alliant with concerns that the ideas and the opportunities that have been proposed to us have actually been ideas and opportunities that are in the best interest of Alliant and their shareholders and not in the best interest of the citizens of Decorah. And I know that not everyone, many people will never know the discomfort that those conversations caused me, but I do want to speak that to some level, it's like there's a bit of a gut reaction to this does not feel good. This does not meet my definition of partnership. And to date, there hasn't been action that changes that feeling for me.
If you go back a few weeks to the meeting we had, the teleconference with our attorney, Sheila, Sheila herself said, okay, we can have our election in 2 years, as will probably occur. She also said it would be at least another 2.5 years or more before the IUB would be able to hear this case and on a complaint, not on the complaint, but to determine whether we can form a municipal utility. So we're looking at 4.5 years out of 5. I don't see that this is a big problem for us moving forward. And I think, like I said, I think we should vote tonight, get our franchise agreement signed, and then talk about the fees later. And we can talk about municipalization when it's time. Right now, it's not time because 2 years ago, we lost the vote. Yeah, it was close, but we lost the vote. We still don't have what I would consider a super majority of people in this community charged up about forging ahead with a municipal utility yet. But this will give you time to get the people fired up and to get our infrastructure projects paid for this summer and beyond.
Question?
Okay.
Steve, I think you
Question?
can go ahead.
So Chad, I heard Sheila say 2.5 years, but I heard it was after the 5-year window. Is that correct?
Can you kind of repeat the question?
No, I understood the question. Steve, you're asking me that you know that you can vote in 2.5 years, but you thought Sheila said you couldn't vote for 5 years?
No, what Kirk said is it would take 2.5 years for it to go to the IUB for them to render. My sense was that we couldn't go to the IUB until the 5-year window was up.
No, I don't think that's the case. As a matter of fact, I think in a call between John and Sheila and I today, she reiterated, you can vote when you can vote per state code, which is in another 2 years in 22, right?
Yes.
That's the 4-year cooling off period between elections. You can
Right.
vote, and then depending on the outcome of that vote, you could proceed with a municipalization application to the IUB, even within an existing franchise agreement. You can do that. What can't happen is that the IUB, if they would so choose, could not issue you an order to municipalize while you're still under contract or under agreement. John, would that be
Okay,
a
thank
correct
you.
way to state that?
Correct.
Appreciate the clarity.
And just for complete transparency, Alliant has said in our meetings that if Decorah were to municipalize, if the IUB allowed it, they would appeal that. So we're looking at an additional time. I'm assuming, Kirk, that is included in your timeline.
I just remember that Sheila said it would be at least, a couple of years after we pass a vote here for the IUB to act on it. And that gets us close to our 5-year window anyway.
And depending upon the franchise fee, that makes a big difference. That's a lot of money.
Okay.
You're going to need that money if you're going to proceed with municipalization. I know, but I don't think that holding this up now and jeopardizing an entire summer's worth of work for our local contractors is worth it, guys. It's not worth it. I'll just say that. Move forward.
Okay, so do I have a motion and a second on the floor? Roll call. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so we have the motion by Chisel and the second by Johnson to consider ordinance 1249, approving the proposed utility franchise agreement with Alliant Energy. And to be clear, this is with a 0% franchise fee. I'll start the roll. Chisel,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Luce,
No.
Carlson,
Aye.
Neal,
No.
Hadley,
No.
Bergen,
No.
motion fails 3-4.
Chad, can you offer directions as to what the next one would be?
So that ordinance fails. Mayor, can you mute?
Yes.
Sorry, just give some feedback. So I would need some direction from council, either from the utility committee or others, as to what, if anything, you'd like to do next, right? But you are at ground zero as far as starting over with an agreement. Again, unless the prevailing side would want to bring the same agreement back, or you need to bring back a different agreement or ordinance, and we will need to set a public hearing and publish over again.
It's just very difficult to enter into an agreement when we have such variability in numbers. You know, to Johanna's point, we were told that there wouldn't be a price increase, and then there was a price increase. And for example, with the Locust Road project, we received correspondence this week that there's a 30% variation in cost potentially from Alliant regarding the effort. It's very hard to make a decision based on a 30% margin. If you came in to buy a suit from my business and I said, well, it's within this 30% window, it'd be, unless you really liked that suit, it'd be hard for you to buy it. And I think not having data and not having consistent data makes things difficult for me. So, I mean, before we bring it back with a percentage, the percentage for a franchise fee to me is going to have to offset the costs of future costs, the future cost benefit of a partnership.
One thing that I'm going to ask also is the fact that we need to know, or the city needs to know too, if this franchise fee isn't in place and we're paying, where that money is going to be coming from and what the cost and tax asking for the citizens of Decorah is going to be.
So my understanding, when we looked at the Locust Road numbers, it had $1.5 million in there for utilities. I mean, so we've seen the bill.
If you're looking at the topography of that job and the construction that has to go through that, you have to know for sure how much, at least an estimate of how much that's going to cost. It'd be a lot different if it was flat and the ground was not the way it is, but it's not. It's rock, pure rock. So we need to know what the cost is and where the money is coming from for that, and put a little more emphasis on that than as far as the anger for the utility. I understand that piece. I want to know where the money's coming from and what the cost
Question?
for citizens.
What agenda item are we on right now?
So we're still under item number, sorry, I've got to find the right sheet here. Item number 7. And I just wanted to clarify. So Steve, I had asked council for direction as to how to move forward on the franchise agreement piece, but I wanted to clarify something that Ross said regarding the 30%. To be clear, Ross, if you're referencing the letter that came in late last week, that is to simply move or relocate the poles and keep everything above ground. That's not the $1 million that we've been talking about to underground everything in the city's trench. So that number that you saw with a 30% variable is a different ask than what we've traditionally been talking about. Because I approached Alliant to ask simply what would it take to move their infrastructure out of our way. And what you saw in that letter was their reply to that request, not to underground everything in our utility trench. Does that make sense?
Well, it makes sense what you're saying, but the numbers don't make sense to me. In the Locust Road project, we're paying to build the trench whether Alliant goes into it or not, because we have other utilities that are going into it. So to Lorraine's point, it being all rock, we're taking on the risk of putting the trench in the rock. The fact that both numbers equal $1.5 million, whether they do it above ground or whether they move into our trench with a 30% variability in cost, the numbers just don't add up. Alliant needs to do a better job of explaining their partnership in this activity. And we need to resolve the franchise agreement fees before we can make an educated decision for our constituents. We just need clarity from Alliant, and we need to have council unity on the franchise fee in my mind. And that would be my action to my ask to the council, that we clarify both of those points before we bring back a motion.
So that sounds like a committee meeting then, or another work session?
Procedurally, whatever works for you, but a 30% variable in cost for overgrounding, and then knowing that we're taking on the cost of the trench already, whether Alliant plays or not, it just doesn't make sense to me. It seems like if we're having a true partnership, the clarity of data would be important. So we can do it in a work session and have the data ahead of time, or you can do it at a committee level and have them report back to us, because I'm not on utility committee.
Okay, I'm gonna close this discussion and move on to number 8. There'll be more coming forth on that.
What?
Mayor's audio is not working very well.
All right, I'll try it. That better?
Yep.
Okay. Discussion and possible action on final draft of complaint documents to the Iowa Utility Board and comments and responses to community action plan regarding electric utility provider. Chad, can you give some background on that, please?
I'll give a little background here, but I'm going to ask John to kind of chime in here. So last council direction was to provide 2 documents to council. One being a complaint to the IUB of discriminatory practices, putting the city of Decorah under duress during negotiation. That document has been outlined, prepared by John, drafted by and reviewed by Sheila. And the council has that document as an attorney work product in front of you. The second action is comments and response on the community action plan submitted by Alliant at the request of the IUB. You have those documents. I would caution that discussion because this is a work product and you initiated in closed session. That detailed conversation should be muted tonight in favor of a closed session. If you wish to get into the weeds, if in concept the materials presented to you look all right, you can act on those. I would ask that you act on them each separately and independently of each other, even though they're on the same line item tonight. And know that those are still confidential documents until you take some action.
And again, I think this is why we should have rearranged the meeting.
So this is Steve, and I would move that we go ahead and send the response of the City of Decorah to Interstate Power Light Company's Customer Satisfaction Stakeholder Engagement Plan to the IUB to add to the docket.
This is Emily and I second it.
We have a motion and a second. And discussion. My question is, as far as litigation is concerned, are you confident in everything that was in that document and the understanding that was in that long document that we just received?
There is no, we're just filing a comment. This is an open docket and they've asked for community comments related to Alliance submission of a community action plan.
Okay.
There's no litigation here. It's just we're submitting comments about how we feel their plan addresses what the board asked them to address.
Okay, I understand.
Emily's
And I
correct
made the
in
motion
terms of-
because I, go ahead.
I was just going to say Emily's correct in the context of the community action plan, if you're considering just that document right now.
That's correct. And I made the motion because I think the points that are made in the 9-page document are on target and really address the need to make the plan more specific and clarifying so that cities working with Iowa Power and Light are clear where they stand and it's not obtuse.
Yeah, I mean, they were
think
asked. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Steve.
No, I just think it's very clearly and concisely put in 9 pages.
No, it's good. And I mean, they were asked to produce this plan partially because of their treatment of Decorah. And I think it's important that we weigh in on that.
Okay, do you have a motion and a second? Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Everybody unmuted.
No.
Mayor, can you mute?
Yes. Go back home.
Luce,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Chisel,
No.
Bergen,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Carlson,
Aye.
Johnson.
No,
Was that a no?
no, nay.
All right. Motion carries. We'll finalize that document and send that.
Okay. All right, resolution. Where is,
Mayor, they're still on item number 8. They may wish to have comments regarding the complaint to the IUB or consider separate action on that.
okay, gotcha. Discuss possible action on final draft. Is that the one they're on? I apologize, going back between these speakers, it's kind of crazy. All right, discussion and possible action on final draft of complaint documents to the Iowa utility boards and comments and responses to community action plan regarding electric utility provider.
John, you want to give just an overview just to keep the council still compliant with confidential work product?
Sure. A general summary of the argument is that Alliant is subjecting the city of Decorah to unreasonable prejudice and disadvantage contrary to Iowa Code 476.5 by threatening to impose its current 2009 government facilities rider on Decorah to gain leverage during the negotiations over the franchise agreement. So essentially, the city of Decorah has had a franchise agreement with Alliant from 1993 to 2018, which did not include a relocation provision, and city of Decorah wasn't charged relocation during that time. Standard process for Alliant with franchise agreements with other communities is that they have included a relocation provision in their franchise ordinances, and the city of Decorah feels that it is inappropriate and violating Iowa Code Chapter 476 by imposing that relocation rider on the city as a negotiation tactic or as a result of Decorah no longer having a franchise agreement. When every other franchise community in Iowa with Alliant has a relocation provision, and our understanding is we're the only community without a franchise agreement. So we're the only ones paying the rider.
And to me, this is Ross. That is what's very confusing. We just got this. This is the document we got last, correct?
Correct.
It's a very, John, thank you for drafting it, but it's a very complex document. And because of the time frame in which it was received, I would consider making a motion to table this one just because it is so meaty that I would like more time to review it before we vote.
And John, would that be appropriate in a closed session?
To discuss attorney work product and the substance in this complaint, yes.
I would suggest that we could schedule, Chad, correct me if I'm wrong, we could do a closed session, but then immediately take action when we come out of it with a special council meeting?
Yes.
How long were you thinking, Ross, to be able to review it?
I'd like to review that, be able to review the document. Maybe a day. I'm good just to read it, but it is, I don't know, isn't it? It's over 10 pages, so it's good to digest before I vote on something. And I guess having some more clarity on our franchise fee discussion. So if we do that all in the same session, I guess it'd be good.
I am for a special session. I think we've got enough here that we first need to digest. And I understand my colleagues want to continue to talk about the franchise agreement. I'm not closed to that, but I want a timeline and to consider these things together.
I'm of the mind that we didn't accomplish this week.
I'm good with that.
I'm going to ask Chad as far as if that's feasible or if, as far as what you've got on your docket and working with this, or if it would be better to go into the next week.
I think we could do something this week, and I agree with council. It'd be nice to get it taken care of.
So you will be giving us more information and setting up a time?
I'll work with Mayor and Wanda on getting a schedule put together.
Okay. I believe we're on 9, correct?
You have a motion to table this one. Is there a second?
Sorry.
Can we motion it? I would second it if it was to a specific next meeting.
Steve, clarify that.
Right now it's just being tabled, but I would like to table it to the next closed session meeting of the council.
Well, you don't have a next closed session. I think the discussion was that I would work with the mayor and the city clerk on developing a schedule yet this week.
So that's what I'm saying. When you come up with something, that's when I would like it to be dealt with.
Okay. So Hadley had a motion on the floor to table. Are you seconding that motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, roll call.
Hadley?
Aye.
Luce?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Carlson?
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Bergen.
Aye.
Okay, consider resolution 38-6, approving collateral assignment to a lease in reference to
Clarity, please.
Consider resolution 3086, approving a collateral assignment for a release reference Raleigh Aviation Properties, Inc., hangar lease. Chad?
So just quickly, I would ask if the council has, Mayor, can you mute, please? If the council has any questions on this, but this resolution acknowledges that the city signed a hangar lease with Raleigh Aviation Properties in October of 2019. The lease agreement provides for the provision that the holder of the lease, the leasee, may consider assigning their rights basically to acquire a mortgage on the hangar, if you will, and they are proposing to do that to a bona fide lending institution. The lease agreement language is in your background notes. It specifically permits the tenant to assign this hangar lease. The proposed collateral assignment of lease is between the hangar tenant and its lender. It does require the approval of the city as the landlord or leaseholder. And it does not put the city at risk. You would still hold the lease. If the leasee would default, the lease is assumed by the mortgage lender.
I assume John has reviewed this and has no issues with it.
I've reviewed it and I had some changes, and Decorah Bank, or I worked with their attorney on that, and we came to an agreement on the changes. So I am in agreement and I approve of it.
Okay.
This is Ross. I'd make a motion to approve resolution 3086.
Second. Luce?
Loose.
Who seconded?
Luce?
Okay. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Roll call?
Hadley,
Aye.
Luce,
Aye.
Carlson,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Bergen.
Aye.
Okay. Consider 1247, amending Chapter 8.20 of the Municipal Code of the City of Decorah related to junk vehicles. First reading.
This is an ordinance that the council had discussed previous meeting, Betterment Committee, I think on May 18, to consider proposed changes suggested and incorporated into the draft that you see. Significant change or changes include removing the provision of vehicle license and licensing from the definition of junk vehicles, clarifying the abatement notices, and redefining the exceptions to the ordinance. There was also, I think, one word or language change to add the word muffler, and that's been done as well. Staff proposes these changes to add increased public health and safety initiatives in our community, and to add for administrative efficiencies in dealing with the prevalence of junk vehicles in our community.
This is Luce. I would move ordinance 1247, first reading, be adopted.
Have a second?
Second, this is Bergen.
Any further discussion?
I'd like to thank the city manager for his work on getting this ordinance cleared up.
Agreed. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Steve and Emily. The chief is here. He's kind of migrated from somewhere in the nether regions to being here physically. I don't know if you have a comment on this ordinance. Did you have anything you wanted to add or change? Okay. And I do appreciate his work on this as well. The police department is instrumental in helping us navigate this ordinance and the policies behind it. So I appreciate their work as well. Thank you.
Yes, thanks.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Luce,
Aye.
Bergen,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Carlson,
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Consider approval of COVID-19 emergency response for city staff and public facilities.
Couldn't understand.
I'll read it again. I think Chad and I are having a fight between the mute buttons and the non-mute buttons. Consider approval of COVID-19 emergency response for city staff and public facilities.
Mayor and council, I don't know that there's necessarily an action item here to approve, but there are several points in our COVID discussion that I would like to update you on. If through this conversation we develop an actionable item, I would certainly ask you to look at that. But just by way of update, city staff is looking at opening public buildings. As you know, since this pandemic started, buildings have been closed to the public, and we've been trying to separate and rotate staff as appropriate. Staff is back to work, mostly at full strength and full shifts, but many of our buildings, all of our buildings have remained closed through today. We propose opening buildings as we are able. In other words, we want to make certain that our staff and the public remain safe. And we would like to implement personal protective devices, equipment, protocols to allow for opening our buildings safely. As of today, we don't know exactly what that looks like yet, nor do we have a date in mind to open. But for example, at City Hall in the administrative offices, we are proposing some measures that would put up some screening, plexiglass, secured entry, those types of things. We just have not determined exactly what that looks like or a cost. Therefore, for now, I would like to say that when those measures are put in place and we can determine what they are, that we would then open our public building. My guess is that's going to still be a little bit of time before that happens. As far as meetings, I had suggested late last week that the council consider coming back to the council chambers for your meetings. I understand that there's still a little bit of reluctance or resistance to do that. If not for your own safety, maybe for the safety of others by way of encouraging large gatherings. And I certainly appreciate that. As department heads, I think at our next department head meeting, we will probably meet in person. And dispense with online or Zoom type meetings, but still practicing safe practices and protocol. For example, so in regards to the council chambers, following the governor's directive on 50% capacity of mass gatherings for an occupancy load and still practicing safe distancing, staff here has set up the council chambers under that directive. So I would encourage you maybe to stop by and see what that looks like, because it's kind of interesting to see what 50% occupancy of a space and 6-foot social distancing really looks like. And the room is set up that way now. And maybe that changes some thoughts for you moving forward to your next meeting, and maybe it doesn't. But I would ask you to come in and take a look and we can talk about that. So on those two things, on meeting and opening public buildings, again, no real direction or actionable item tonight. maybe more by way of update or an ask for input if you have comment. Another item that has been something that the city has facilitated in the downtown district is reserved parking for various establishments. At the staff level, in consultation with staff and Chief Smutzler and I, agreeing that now would be the time to lift that provision and remove those special reserved or special requested downtown parking spaces. The reason being that the governor has lifted mandated closings for retail and other establishments. And so anything that's done at this point, I feel, is voluntary or a voluntary measure on behalf of businesses. And as other businesses open and fully become operational, they need that parking as well. And so it's kind of a challenge there as to what protocol to follow. But my recommendation is that we lift those abilities to reserve parking spaces for those businesses. Parks are open.
Wait, can I ask a question on that? Or do you want me to wait till
Sorry?
you're done? Well, I had a question on that specifically, but do you want me to wait till you're done?
No, you can ask.
I'm just curious if you've heard from businesses. Like, have they asked to keep their parking spaces? Have they said we want? I'm just curious what the business community response has been to that and what they thought on it.
There's a couple of businesses that would still like to maintain. Others are asking, we need downtown parking. And so, there seems to be an understanding that as things progress back to some level of normal, parking is needed, so.
Chad, this is Johanna. Is there a middle way there in terms of, could there still be a specific request that we consider? I by no means have been asked this, but just as a shopper myself, thinking about Donlands, and they're just serving a really at-risk population, and those additional spaces seem like they might continue to be useful.
Yeah, I think that's something, I anticipate that ask as well. And we'll have to kind of navigate that and figure out the best protocol for that. What I wouldn't want to have happen is all of a sudden we establish some type of formalized request or application process, and then all of a sudden we're still considering the same issues that we have today. But maybe there are some extenuating circumstances that we might consider.
I know we may not have had any requests yet, but I know that, the data out there now suggests that people are much safer, eating and sitting outdoors. I'm a little surprised that none of our eating and drinking establishments haven't asked for, a few parking spaces just to have some more outdoor space where they don't have enough. But I think those requests could come. I haven't seen them yet, unless you've talked with anyone.
We haven't seen those requests either.
And I do encourage us to be innovative. We know that things can't go back to the way they were. And so I guess if we could be working with our downtown businesses to think of what are the innovative things we could do? Like, maybe we say, we want to figure out how to have parking, but also a unique environment where people feel safe coming downtown in a way that's not just the status quo. I think that would be an interesting discussion to have with maybe jobs or when someone in chamber, because I think we could be innovative here as opposed to just, this is the way it's been done.
Decorah Downtown Betterment has talked about that a little bit, kind of hinging on the idea of what's it look like to close Winnebago Street and have that be an outdoor eating type area, even if it were just for the remainder of the summer or something like that. So those have just been conversational type discussions at this point, no real movement or action on that. But those kind of ideas, Emily, have been bounced around a little bit.
Perfect, great. Thanks.
I would speak to we have the expectation of facial coverings being used when people are shopping in our community. Not a mandated, but an expectation that people will cover their face.
And I was going to say, I think one way we could do that is actually mandated in city buildings. The reason I bring that up is when Lorraine and I were on a conversation with the hospital, and I specifically asked, what could the city do to best support you in this epidemic and pandemic? And they said, actually, figuring out how to get people to wear masks. Like that is to them the number one most important thing we could do. So while I don't know that we can use our oversight to do anything more than request masks somewhere else, we certainly have the ability in our own public buildings to require masks for outsiders. And I would ask, I mean, I think that when you're developing your staff protocol for opening, you should consider that that was a request by our hospital.
Yeah, we will certainly look at, you know, we stay in close contact with local public health officials, and that would still be our directive as we look to open up buildings or bring meetings back to in-person, what protocols need to be followed. Last thing I would mention is regarding the community pool. I know that's probably the biggest topic for a lot of people. And I would say at this point that we still, we spend an awful lot of time talking about the pool, who's opening, why are they opening, who's not opening, and why are they not opening. And at this point, Andy and I still spend a fair amount of time talking about the protocols and what that looks like to open. He's trying to gather as much information as he can and get it to his park board. He's really trying to work with the park board to get some direction from them. And I think sometime next week, they're planning a meeting to address this issue in more detail. And we're hopeful that maybe there's even more guidance from public health and the governor's office by that time. Right now, pools are allowed to open with restrictions on to lap swimming and swim lessons only. And we kind of debate and discuss that issue in and of itself as well. Some challenges obviously might be if there's limits on capacity, how do you even regulate that? And if you've regulated it in such a way that some people are allowed in and some people are not, what kind of situation does that put the staff, which tends to be teenagers and high schoolers, in terms of enforcement and monitoring and administration and all those kinds of things that go into it. So no decision yet on the pool. We'll continue to discuss. If you have input, certainly let us know, but otherwise look for some type of decision by later next week. That's all I have on COVID. Actually, I think that's all I have under my report as well, Mayor, as we jump to the next item, unless there's any other comments on COVID. Staff reports are in your Dropbox. So for the sake of time and efficiency, I would just draw your attention to staff and department head reports in your Dropbox rather than calling on any of them to share here with you. Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay. I just wanted to make a notation that, just for your information, the Decorah Faith Coalition at 11 o'clock on Mondays are ringing their bells just to acknowledge and commemorate people who have passed away from the COVID. So if you hear the bells ringing on Mondays at 11, please just take a look. My only final copies is that we live in a really tumultuous time of uncertainty and change and chaos. At times like these, it is good to look around in gratitude at our family, friends, and fellow citizens for all that is good and positive in our lives. Consider kindness to those around us by continuing to practice social distancing, by continuing to wear a mask and reaching out to assist those who need to stay at home, who are vulnerable. In turn, accepting that all lives matter, all lives have value, and all lives are important in the makeup of our community. Be kind to one another. For that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
I would like to say that I appreciated the 200 people who gathered for a time of silence along Water Street yesterday to recognize the racism of our country, and that we of privilege who are still breathing and don't have to worry about losing our breath because of the color of our skin have a very obligated situation to care for all of our people in our community and in our country.
Oh, go ahead. Go
Emily?
ahead. No, I think it's very hard to know what words are appropriate in times when there is such devastation going on around us. Yet within our own community, we see people come together, you know, like the 250 people who were at this march. Yet, you know, I'm staring at a group of leaders in our community and quite honestly, leaders in Iowa and leaders in the world, and asking myself, what's our responsibility here? Because we have one. And I'd really like to think about ways that we as a council, that we as city staff can have conversations with our community members of color, and ask them, you know, to help us think about the ways in which we have systemic racism going on here in Decorah. It is real, and we see it as a, you know, maybe we see it as an urban issue. It's not. It's an American issue, and we are the council of an American city, and I think we have a responsibility to do something. And so I guess I don't have a lot of what that might be, but I would like to really think about conversation groups with our community of color at both the city leadership level, at staff level, and to think about ways that we can create the most welcoming community that we can, to be a model for other cities and other communities.
Johanna, anything on your end?
Just a thank you to fellow council members and mayor and city staff for working together to do the best we can for our community. This week, I'm very aware that I'm a white woman of privilege, and therefore don't have a lot of important words to share. And so I would just say that racism exists in our community here in Iowa, in our country, that Black lives do matter, and that I would be interested and willing to step into action if there's appropriate action and others on council are willing to do so. I don't know what else is appropriate for our role as white people in this community. So thank you. I'm just very grateful that I'm in this with all of you and that we're serving our community together.
Thank you, Johanna. Ross?
Well, Mayor, one of the highlights of last week for me was with you when we met with Senator Grassley. There was a small group of us that got a opportunity to meet with him. Because of social distancing, it was a very small meeting. I had on a couple different hats. One was for the retail community and the restaurants to discuss the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Plan, and the effects on our community with the senator. It was also interesting to have the hospital there, to have the schools there, to have Luther there, and the hospital there, to realize the economic impact that COVID has on our community, has had on our community, and will continue to have on our community. And hearing him talk about the challenges of policy creation and whatnot was very interesting. And then the other side of my week kind of can be summed up by disenfranchised. Not as a white, straight male, but I feel like so many of us in some way are disenfranchised, many more than others. And we are all disenfranchised in some way. So the franchise discussion, not everyone feeling represented for electric power, the disenfranchisement of our society, of people of color, and depriving people of power. So franchising and power were common themes. And I look for a better world in so many different ways. But Again, thank you all for working together and making it better. Please wear masks. The businesses are open now. And it's the best way that we're going to stay healthy and avoid a second wave. Thanks.
Thanks, Russ. Randy?
I've got nothing this evening, Mayor.
Thank you. Kirk?
Nothing, Mayor, except I want to remind everyone, even though Iowa may be opening up, we haven't exactly followed the national protocols for opening up, and our case numbers continue to rise. I just wish everybody would take some caution and protect yourselves and others.
Thank you, Kirk. Andy?
I guess in light of the last week and the events that have unfolded, I think it's important that we all listen to everyone, not just constituents, but people of color, people who are disenfranchised, like Ross said. It's sometimes you have to just step back, put yourself in other people's shoes, and have that empathy. I don't think that it's easy for people in rural Iowa to think, oh, it's not a problem or it doesn't affect me. But it does. It affects all of us. So I think it's important that we listen. I don't have all the answers. I wish I did. But, I think it's important that we all work together towards a common goal, and that's equality and a better world for our children, grandchildren, etc. So that's it.
Thank you, Andy. Who'd I forget? What'd I forget? Where am I? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Thank you. Have a good evening.